You know that moment when you realize the person you trusted most was planning your professional execution? I'm Caroline Jameson, and I learned that lesson the hard way at Crest Technologies. Let me paint you a picture. It's 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I'm sitting in my corner office, the one I'd earned after 6 years of bleeding for this company. The rain is drumming against my windows, creating this almost hypnotic rhythm that I'd grown to love during long strategy sessions. My screen flickers, then goes dark. Access denied. I refresh. Same message. My heart starts racing because I know exactly what this means. The coffee in my mug has gone cold, untouched for the past hour while I'd been deep in financial projections for our Q4 investor presentation. The irony isn't lost on me now. I was literally preparing materials I'd never be allowed to present. I founded the strategy division at Crest Technologies from nothing. When I joined as employee number 12, we were barely scraping by with outdated cybersecurity solutions housed in a cramped office above a dry cleaner in downtown Portland. I remember the smell of industrial solvents mixing with the desperation of a company on the brink. The CEO back then, Michael Torres, had hired me with a handshake and a promise: "Caroline, if you can figure out where we're going, I'll make sure you lead us there." I saw the vision: AI-driven threat detection that could predict attacks before they happened. Not just reactive security, but proactive intelligence that could save companies millions in prevented breaches. I built the roadmap, secured our first major client, a healthcare network that's now worth $800 million, and turned strategy into the beating heart of this company. But here's what I didn't see coming: office politics can be deadlier than any cyber attack. The warning signs had been there for months. Small things at first: being excluded from certain executive meetings, finding out about product decisions through company-wide emails instead of strategic planning sessions. Then bigger red flags: my team being reassigned to projects without my input, budget approvals requiring additional signatures that hadn't been needed before. The final straw should have been last month's board meeting. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation on our expansion into European markets, 60 slides of market analysis, competitive positioning, and financial projections that represented 3 months of research. Thomas had smiled when I handed him the deck, then proceeded to present it himself, barely acknowledging my contribution except for a throwaway line about the team's excellent research. But even then, I didn't see the trap being set. The CTO, Thomas Brennan, strides into my office without knocking. His face is stone cold, the kind of expression you wear when you're about to deliver a killing blow. He's wearing that charcoal suit I'd complimented him on just last week during our quarterly review, when he told me I was instrumental to Crest's continued success. "Caroline, your access to the investor portal has been revoked." I look up from my dead screen, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry, what?" "You're not part of strategy anymore." Those 6 words hit like a physical punch. Not part of strategy? I am strategy. I built this entire division from the ground up. I recruited every analyst, developed every framework, secured every major client relationship that kept us afloat during the lean years. The methodology we use for threat assessment? I created it during a weekend marathon session fueled by energy drinks and pure determination. The client retention program that boosted our renewals by 47%? My baby. But I don't say any of that. Instead, I nod and walk away. You want to know why? Because I learned something valuable in my previous startup, Nexus Analytics, the one that got acquired for $42 million after I'd spent 18 months building their market intelligence platform. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stay silent and let your enemies reveal their hand. The elevator ride down to the parking garage feels like descending into hell. My reflection in the polished steel doors shows someone I barely recognize, tired, defeated, blindsided. But by the time I reach my car, something has shifted. The shock is crystallizing into something much more dangerous: clarity. See, what Thomas didn't know is that I'd been having conversations. Not just any conversations, strategic ones. 3 months earlier, at the TechCrunch conference in Austin, I'd reconnected with Alexandra Chan, a venture partner at Silverton Capital. We'd worked together 5 years ago when she was still at Goldman Sachs, and she'd been tracking Crest's growth trajectory with the kind of attention that makes founders either very excited or very nervous. "Caroline," she'd said over coffee at this little place near the convention center, "what you've built at Crest is exactly what we're looking for. Have you ever considered spinning out the strategy division?" At the time, I'd laughed it off. Crest was my home. But after that conversation, I started thinking. What if I could take everything I'd built and make it independent? What if I could own my vision instead of just executing it? The idea had been percolating for weeks, tucked away in the back of my mind like a secret I wasn't ready to acknowledge. But Thomas had just forced my hand. So while Thomas thought he was pushing me out, I was already 3 steps ahead. I spent the next 2 weeks in what I call productive stealth mode. Mornings at coffee shops around the city, drafting business plans on my personal laptop while other professionals hurried past with their corporate badges and worried expressions. My favorite spot became this little place called Grind Coffee, where the barista, Jake, started knowing my order by heart: double shot Cortado with oat milk, no sugar. Working on something big, he'd asked on day 3, noticing the intensity with which I attacked my keyboard. You could say that, I'd replied, not looking up from financial projections that were starting to paint a very interesting picture. Evenings were spent on encrypted calls with potential co-founders, brilliant minds I'd worked with who were ready for their next challenge. There was Amanda Rodriguez, a former McKinsey consultant who'd been frustrated by the glacial pace of corporate change. And James Liu, a data scientist from my Nexus days who'd been itching to apply machine learning to strategic planning in ways that traditional consulting firms couldn't imagine. Caroline, Amanda had said during our second call, what you're describing isn't just a business. It's a revolution in how companies think about strategy. Weekends were for the deep work, refining financial projections, conducting market analysis, and mapping out the competitive landscape. I'd transformed my home office into mission control, with whiteboards covering every wall and sticky notes creating a rainbow of insights and action items. The beautiful irony? Everything I needed to know about Crest's weaknesses, I'd documented myself. Every strategic gap, every missed opportunity, every client pain point that we'd failed to address, it was all there in my meticulously organized files. 6 years of institutional knowledge that Thomas had just handed me the motivation to weaponize. I remember the exact moment when the pieces clicked into place. It was a Sunday morning, and I was reviewing client feedback surveys from the past year. Pattern after pattern emerged. Clients loved working with me personally, but found Crest's broader organization slow to respond and difficult to navigate. They wanted strategic guidance, not just cybersecurity products. They wanted partnership, not just vendor relationships. That's when I realized, I hadn't just been building a strategy division at Crest. I'd been proving a market for something much bigger. Alexandra introduced me to her partners during a video call that lasted 3 hours. Her colleague, Robert Kim, asked the kind of probing questions that would have intimidated me 5 years ago but now felt like intellectual foreplay. Caroline, walk us through your thesis on why independent strategy consulting will outperform traditional models in the next 5 years. I'd been preparing for this question my entire career without knowing it. The market is fragmenting, I began, pulling up slides I created during my marathon weekend sessions. Mid-market companies need strategic guidance, but they can't afford McKinsey, and the smaller firms don't have the technological sophistication to compete in an AI-driven landscape. We're positioned to capture that entire white space. They loved the vision, Strategy Pro AI, an independent consultancy that would revolutionize how mid-market companies approach strategic planning. We'd use the same AI-driven methodologies I'd developed at Crest, but without the corporate bureaucracy holding us back. Plus, we'd offer something traditional consulting firms couldn't: actual ownership of outcomes through equity partnerships with select clients. We want to lead your Series A, Alexandra said during our third meeting, held in Silverton's downtown offices with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. $2.8 million, with an option for additional funding based on early traction. My hands were literally shaking as I signed the term sheet. Not from nervousness, from pure adrenaline. This was the moment everything changed. But here's where it gets interesting. Part of our funding strategy involved acquiring strategic assets, specifically, the intellectual property and client relationships that would give us an immediate competitive advantage. And wouldn't you know it, Crest Technologies had exactly what we needed. The legal team Alexandra recommended was ruthless in the best possible way. Sarah Mitchell, the lead attorney, had built her career dismantling non-compete clauses and had an almost supernatural ability to find loopholes in employment contracts. Caroline, she'd said during our first meeting, let me understand this correctly. You developed these methodologies over 6 years, documented everything meticulously, and built all the client relationships personally? That's right. And your original employment contract was drafted in 2018, Before most companies understood the value of strategic IP? Correct. She smiled like a shark who'd just spotted blood in the water. Oh, this is going to be fun. They'd identified that several key methodologies I'd developed at Crest were actually owned by me personally, a quirk of my original employment contract that nobody had bothered to review in 6 years. The threat assessment framework, the client retention algorithm, even the presentation templates that had become standard across the company, all mine. More importantly, the non-compete clause was so narrowly written that it only applied to direct cybersecurity competitors. Strategic consulting was a completely different industry from a legal perspective. Day 14 after my access was revoked, I'm in my new office space, a sleek co-working facility downtown that costs more per month than my first apartment. The space has this energy that's hard to describe, young companies building the future, the constant hum of ambition and caffeine. I've claimed a corner spot with natural light and a view of the mountains, the kind of workspace I'd always dreamed of having. I'm reviewing our go-to-market strategy when my phone starts buzzing. Unknown number, but the area code is local. I answer anyway. Caroline Jameson. Heavy breathing. Then, Caroline, we need to talk. Now. It's Thomas. The same voice that had coldly dismissed me 2 weeks ago now sounds frantic, almost panicked. There's background noise, multiple voices, the sound of people moving frantically. I'm sorry, who is this? I ask, even though I know exactly who it is. Don't play games. Why is your name on the new funding round announcement? I pause, savoring the moment. The press release had gone live exactly 1 hour ago, timed to coincide with the morning news cycle. Alexandra's PR team had crafted it perfectly. Former Crest Technologies strategy director launches revolutionary AI-driven consulting firm with $2.8 million Series A. Which funding round would that be, Thomas? You know exactly which one. Strategy Pro AI. The announcement went live an hour ago. And then, I kid you not, my office door bursts open. Thomas Brennan, the man who'd revoked my access and told me I wasn't part of strategy anymore, is standing in my doorway looking like he's seen a ghost. His usually perfect hair is disheveled, his tie slightly askew. Behind him, I can see my former colleagues from Crest gathered in the hallway, their faces a mixture of shock and admiration. Why is your name on the new funding round? He repeats, his voice cracking. I gesture to the chair across from my desk. Thomas, please. Sit down. He doesn't move. His eyes are scanning my office, taking in the whiteboards covered with strategic frameworks, the wall of client testimonials I'd printed and mounted, the corner where Amanda and James are working on laptops with Strategy Pro AI stickers. Caroline, you can't do this. You signed a non-compete. I open my laptop and pull up my employment contract, the one his legal team had drafted 6 years ago when Crest was still small enough that everyone knew everyone else's coffee order. Actually, I signed a non-compete that specifically prohibits me from working for direct competitors in the cybersecurity space. Strategy Pro AI is a strategic consulting firm. We help companies develop better business strategies. Completely different market. His face goes pale. You're taking our clients. I'm not taking anyone. I'm offering services that you apparently decided you didn't need me to provide. I lean back in my chair, feeling calmer than I have in months. Besides, these clients aren't your property. They're relationships I built over 6 years of excellent work. The Morrison Healthcare account called this morning, he says, and there's defeat in his voice. They want to terminate their contract with us and work with you directly. I nod. Morrison Healthcare had been my first major win at Crest, a relationship I'd nurtured from a cold email to a 7-figure annual contract. Dr. Peterson is a smart woman. She understands the value of working directly with the person who's been solving her problems for 3 years. The next 20 minutes are a masterclass in desperation. Thomas tries everything, threats about intellectual property theft, quickly shut down when I show him the legal analysis, guilt trips about loyalty and company culture, rich, coming from the man who'd stabbed me in the back, even a job offer that would have doubled my previous salary and given me the Chief Strategy Officer title I'd been pushing for. Thomas, I finally interrupt, let me ask you something. When you revoked my access 2 weeks ago, did you think I'd just disappear? Did you think I'd quietly find another corporate job and pretend none of this ever happened? He's quiet for a long moment. I thought you'd fight for your position. Try to prove yourself again. I did prove myself. For 6 years. The problem wasn't my performance, it was your inability to recognize value when it was sitting right in front of you. But here's what he doesn't understand: this was never about money or titles or recognition, though those are nice. This was about respect. About building something that no one could take away from me with a simple access denied message. About creating value on my own terms instead of waiting for someone else to decide I was worthy. Caroline, he finally says, his voice barely above a whisper, what do you want? I close my laptop and look him directly in the eyes. I want you to understand something, Thomas. When you revoked my access, you didn't fire me. You freed me. He leaves without another word, but not before I catch him glancing at our team photo on the wall, Amanda, James, and I laughing during our first official strategy session. It's the kind of genuine joy that corporate environments rarely capture. 6 months later, Strategy Pro AI has 15 employees, 12 major clients, and a valuation that's climbing faster than anyone expected. 3 of those clients are former Crest accounts who decided they preferred working directly with the person who'd actually been solving their problems all along. We've expanded into 3 new markets, launched an AI-powered strategic planning platform that's generating industry buzz, and attracted talent from companies I used to only dream of competing against. But you know what the real victory is? Last week, I got a LinkedIn message from a junior analyst at Crest, Emily Turner, someone I'd mentored during her first year. Caroline, she wrote, I've been following your journey since you left. The culture here has completely changed since Thomas took over strategy. Any chance you're hiring? I called her that afternoon. Emily starts next month as our Director of Client Success, bringing with her insights about 3 major accounts that are already expressing interest in switching to our services. The revolution isn't just about building something new. It's about inspiring others to recognize their own worth and take control of their professional destiny. It's about proving that sometimes the best response to being pushed out is to build something so compelling that everyone wants in. 2 weeks ago, I received an email that made me laugh out loud. Michael Torres, Crest's original CEO who'd been pushed out in a boardroom coup last year, wanted to meet for coffee. Caroline, he wrote, I heard about what you built. I should have never let them push you out. I'm ready to get back in the game, interested in a conversation about acquisition opportunities? The company that had dismissed me was now being courted by the company I'd built from nothing. The student had become the master, and the master wanted back in. So here's my question for you: what access has been revoked in your life that might actually be the key to your freedom? Sometimes the door they closed behind you is exactly the push you needed to build your own house. Sometimes the biggest insult becomes the greatest gift, disguised as rejection but actually delivered as liberation. Drop a comment and let me know, have you ever had a moment where what felt like a setback turned into your biggest breakthrough? I read every single response, and trust me, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead.